Okay, folks, it's 6:03 p.m. and it's Tuesday, February 8th, 2022. And I'm calling to order the meeting of the regular meeting of the Common Council, and we're in the council chambers in Platteville, Wisconsin. So Candace, we'll start with roll call.
Jason Arts.
Here.
Lynn Parrott.
Here.
Isaac Shanley.
Here.
Barbara Doss.
Here.
Ken Killian.
Here.
Eileen Nichols. Kathy Kopp.
Here. Okay, the first order of business is the consideration of the consent calendar. The following items may be approved on a single motion and vote due to their routine nature. If you want a separate discussion and action, please let us know as we go through them. We have the council minutes from January 25th, 2022. We have payment of bills, appointments to boards and committees. I have none tonight, and licenses, 1- and 2-year operator licenses to sell and serve alcohol as presented in your packet.
I move to approve the consent calendar.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the consent calendar. Jody will, or Candace will vote.
Arts.
Yes.
Parrott.
Yes.
Shanley.
Yes.
Doss.
Yes.
Killian.
Yes.
Nichols.
Yes.
Kopp.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, we have citizens' comments, observations, and petitions, if any. The only green sheets that I have received are corresponding to items on our agenda. So, but I will call on Councilor Nichols to remind us of the museum fundraiser.
Well, there are a number of activities at the museum. The 19th of this month, you can go underground and see the wonderful frozen mine. And all this information, by the way, is on the museum website. They also, the Friends of the Museum have their pasty sale still ongoing. The 19th is the last day you can order. Great pasty. I've had it. And the other thing is that the Lyceum programs that are starting, the first one will be February 20th. And again, please go onto the museum site and register for any and all of those. Thank you.
Okay,
And then if I can snag a quick second here. So I'd like to officially introduce, obviously, to some of the council members who haven't had a chance to meet him yet, but then also to the community and the public, our new Park and Rec director. So we have Bob Lau, who is right
so
there
Bob,
waving.
why don't you come to the microphone so we can get him right up here, Bob? Right to the podium.
You want me to walk up there?
That's exactly what I want you to
Told
do.
you.
I was waiting. Sure.
Exactly what we want you to do.
Oh, very well.
Then we will grill you.
Yeah.
All right.
Good.
Actually, it makes it easier for Jody to get a good picture of you for our YouTube and our whatever.
There's no good picture of it.
Yeah.
There's no good
Yeah,
picture
yeah.
of it.
This-
All right. So Bob, you've been on the job for like a week,
1 week.
That's right.
1
a week
No,
yesterday,
yes, I started Tuesday, so 1 week today.
1 week
Yep,
today.
yep.
All right. And you visited every park already.
Yes.
At least you
Yeah,
think
as
you did.
much as I can. Right,
Okay.
right.
All right. Well, welcome.
Thank you.
And we look forward to working with you. Are there other announcements you'd like to make about that department or that Bob would like to make?
So do you want to do it or do you want me to do it?
No, we're excited. So, but you've been working on this a long time.
Yeah, so we had obviously as kind of part of some repositioning of staffs and some changes here we've made at the city. We had 2 other new positions that have started. So we now have a city hall office assistant. That is Jen Taylor. She actually started last week as well. She's actually here tonight doing some kind of training, kind of learning the ropes a little bit more. So we're excited obviously to have her and assisting the city and kind of answering the general questions. So she typically will be the first kind of point of contact that the majority of the public will see. But then also specifically towards the Park and Rec department, another change that we made is we now have a new position, not a new position, but kind of a restructured position. We have a recreation and community events coordinator, and that is Adam Bartels. He actually started this week. I think Monday was his first day. So both he and Bob are kind of hitting the ground running. Adam actually was already a part of our park and recreation staff. He was one of our park maintenance workers. So that's why we felt it was a good transition to bring him into that role, because he already has the experience of kind of setting up a lot of our fields and dealing with the programming. And he actually has been one of the employees that was handling kind of the day-to-day operations of the Broski Center in regards to getting it set up. So we're excited, obviously, to have both of them and getting them up to speed as quick as we can, because obviously, as we know, we're hopeful snow will go away and we'll have some warmer days that we can start doing some activities. So
Yeah, we're wrapping up the volleyball and then we're getting ready for all their spring stuff. And Adam has just been, as soon as he started yesterday, just the relief, all the things that we can do, provide better services for everyone. And we're just very excited. The both of us will be working together. We'll be able to handle a lot. So it'll look good.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you.
That's it?
Yep, that's it.
All right. Thanks, Bob.
All right. Any other thing, this Adam? Anything else?
oh yes, do you want me to, I'll wait till we get to that item and then I'll announce the news there, but
Okay.
otherwise that's.
All right. Then we'll move on to reports. There were several reports in your packets. Kathy, any thing you want to highlight from the airport commission minutes?
No, nothing further.
How about from the Commission on Aging?
Not at this time.
And how about the Police and Fire Commission?
I just want to note that the department put together a really, really detailed, excellent annual report that is on the city's website. So please take a look at that. Very well done. Gives a great overview of everything that happened last year.
Okay, it appears that Ken has a question about,
Question is on Commission on Aging, December 15th meeting. And perhaps city manager can answer this. It says in here in the minutes, it seems that the decision about the fire station has been made and we may be moving again. So are we going to discuss that finally under the fire station at the end as far as request for proposal?
Yep, I can answer that question when we get to the request for proposals,
Okay.
certainly.
Because it comes up different times.
Yes.
okay. Those were the board, commission, and committee minutes. Other reports in the packet were the task force, the Tide report. Any update there you want to share, Adam?
Just that they are continuing, the task force is continuing to review kind of a community service guide, which will eventually get in front of the council here. They wanted another month to kind of look that over, but that guide is kind of it is mainly geared towards homeless resources for anybody in the community that would be aware of, as well as it was staff or even community members. It's trying to provide some kind of useful resources in regards to, places they can go possibly for clothing, services, education, different avenues. And the next step that the Tide group wants to do is kind of look at that and see how they can create kind of a toolkit, maybe go out to some businesses and talk about potentially if they would donate certain items. So that's something that they're working on. We're continuing to kind of look at some different inclusivity, diversity, and equity trainings. We're working right now with UW Platteville on kind of looking at a potential proposal that they are working on to get back to us. And then one of the things, obviously, that the group wants to look at is having some speakers come in from various organizations and kind of talk to that group as well. And then also starting to plan, one of our strategic goal items for 2022 was to have a joint meeting between the council as well as Tide. So we're looking at potentially when that would make sense and kind of coming up with some topic items that not only the council could ask Tide, but then Tide could also kind of report back to the council. So that's what they've been working on so far.
Excellent. Department progress reports. Anybody with questions on any of the department progress reports?
I wonder for Nicola. I could probably ask in quiet. Continued work on updating of cemetery records. What is being done?
So one of our accounting specialists, Beth Vanetta, has been working on updating one of our accounting specialists, Elizabeth Vanetta, has been updating mapping and identification of plots and our record books as well for the cemeteries.
Okay, next question is 2022 budget book. When will that be coming?
Right, so that has been delayed. In fact, I have filed for an extension on the deadline to submit that. That's because with a combination of providing some a deeper level of support to some members of the finance team that are still learning some aspects of their job for the first time. You know, we have a new group of accounting specialists in the finance team, and some of them are still in their first year, so they haven't been through a complete cycle of every aspect of their job. So I have been providing some additional levels of support for the team. And then we've also had some delays related to COVID with some people being out, including myself back a couple months ago now. So yeah, that's the status of the budget book.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions on the Department Progress Reports? And then before we move into our action items, I have to say congratulations to one of our members here on the council. Lynn Parrott will be a featured speaker, a keynote speaker on February 19th for the Black Student Union sponsored Ebony Weekend. And so congratulations, Lynn, and we'll look forward to seeing you and hearing you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Okay, let's move then into action items tonight. The first is the Inclusive Playground financial request. Adam.
Yeah, so obviously at the Monday, January 17th, Park Forestry and Recreation Committee meeting, members from the Platteville Inclusive Playground Committee were in attendance. Christina Bird, the organization, gave a presentation on the status of their efforts thus far. Christina and members from the committee were also in attendance during the January 25th, 2022 Common Council meeting to provide a similar presentation to council members. Community Development Director Carol, with the assistance of other city staff, submitted a community development block grant request to the Department of Administration on Thursday, January 13th, 2022. The grant included a total estimated project cost amount of $2,221,970. The project has three components: an inclusive playground to be constructed in Smith Park, a sidewalk/path to be constructed along 2nd Street from Legion Field North and connecting to a path being constructed by the Platteville Township, and new parking facilities in Smith Park and Legion Field that connect to the sidewalk/paths and support the inclusive playground. What I would like to provide everybody with an update tonight is we received word on February 1st, 2022 from the State of Wisconsin Department of Administration that we have been awarded the entire $2,221,970. So first and foremost, I want to give a huge shout out to Director Carol. As anybody who witnesses this information, there are a lot of behind the scenes meetings that not only we have had as staff, but it is a beast of a report that has to be done in order to submit for this grant request. And luckily we have somebody as Joe who has had experience in doing these in the past for the city. But I have no doubt that if we did not have him working on this, we would not have been awarded this. So Director Carroll, I want to thank you very much for your work on this. But then
Commission on this one?
what's that?
Do I get a commission on this one?
We'll see. See if I can throw that in there. But also not really, I also want to acknowledge the rest of the staff as well. All of us, including everybody here at this table, as well as the rest of our staff that is not here, spent a lot of long hours kind of spending time in putting this information together. So what this means is they're essentially in the request, it was broken up in three parts. So I want to make this clear that out of the 2 million, 1.9 was essentially designated for the inclusive playground. And then about $150,000 each was earmarked for the parking lot to go in Legion Park and then the sidewalk. So what we have right now is we have 45 days essentially from this. I have sent a response saying that thank you very much. We're going to go through the process of making sure we don't screw this up. But what has to happen now is we essentially have 45 days where there is paperwork that has to be signed. There's documents that have to be delivered and kind of some back and forth meetings between the city and the Department of Administration where we officially have to kind of agree to a signed development agreement, document, whatever you want to call it. So those are some of the steps that are going to happen now. So kind of with that, as we're continuing, so if you remember, during the presentation, the Platteville Inclusive Playground Committee indicated when they approached donors for possible financial contributions, the number one question being asked is what the city has financially pledged towards this project. Even if the city is successful in getting the community development block grant with 100% funding, some items cannot be funded by the grant. City staff learned from the Department of Administration refurbishing the stone shelter bathrooms to be ADA accessible would not be eligible for grant funding as it is not considered a new structure. Further, since the grant submittal, the Platteville Inclusive Playground Committee has also discussed with staff the potential for additional items to be included with the project, such as various forms of signage, a pavilion located within the playground complex, additional fencing to incorporate the large green space or pavilion area, and ADA accessible picnic tables. City staff are working with the committee on kind of solidifying the cost estimates for these assorted items. So as far as the budget or fiscal impact, the Platteville Inclusive Playground Committee is asking for the city of Platteville to pledge $100,000 to go towards this project with no conditions, qualifications, or restrictions. The organization fears if conditions are placed on the pledge, it potentially could cause other donors to do the same. So the Parks, Forestry, and Recreation Department currently manages several trust fund and endowment funds. These funds and accounts are not funded by taxpayers and carry over from year to year. This is often money collected for a specific purpose via either a grant or a donation, so there are restrictions on how some of these monies can be spent. So in reviewing endowment and trust funds that could be utilized to assist with a pledge towards an inclusive playground, the following would be potential options for the council to consider. There's the Orlo Clayton Endowment Fund, which was established in 2015. This fund was gifted from the Park and Recreation Program for the maintenance and improvement of Smith Park and Legion Field as determined by the Common Council and the city of Platteville upon the recommendation of the appropriate city staff. As of December 31st, 2021, there's currently $124,601.62 available, which could be utilized for a project. The second fund is the Cyril Clayton Endowment Fund, which was established in 2015. This fund was gifted for the Park and Recreation Program for the maintenance and improvement of Smith and Legion Field as determined by the Common Council in the city of Platteville upon, again, the recommendation of the appropriate city staff. Now, this fund also can be utilized. It is restricted towards Smith and Legion, but then it also can be utilized for other park and recreation programming. So it does not have that specific restriction that it can only be used in Smith and Legion. That was originally kind of a part of it, but it also can be utilized for any type of new park or recreation programming, et cetera. The Platteville Park Endowment Fund was established in 2014. The primary purpose of this fund is to maintain, improve, or expand City of Platteville parks, trails, and other recreational facilities. So currently there's about $8,700 that is available in there. There is the Platteville Parks Binding Trust, which was established in 2012. The purpose of this fund is to maintain and improve or expand City of Platteville parks, trails, or other recreational facilities. As of December 31st, there is currently $21,488.94 available, which could potentially be utilized for this project. And then we do have park impact fees. So the city's municipal code includes regulations regarding parkland dedication requirements. So within the corporate limits of the city, subdividers are required to dedicate sufficient land to provide park, recreation, and general open spaces to meet the anticipated neighborhood needs of residential and development areas, or they pay a fee in lieu of land. As of December 31st, 2021, there is currently $46,764.19 available, which could be utilized for a project. So the Platteville Park and Forestry and Recreation Committee at their January 17th, 2020 meeting made the recommendation to the Common Council pledge $100,000 to come from one or several trust/endowment accounts to go towards the Platteville Inclusive Playground Project with no restrictions applied to the pledge. If the Common Council wishes to pledge any amount or an amount, city staff would recommend the entire pledge for the Platteville Inclusive Playground Project come out of the Orlo Clayton Endowment Fund. This fund is specifically designated for improvements to Smith Park and is the fund that currently has the most financial capacity to absorb the request. City staff discussed the concerns of depleting other accounts for this project, as other accounts can be utilized in all of our city parks, whereas the Orlo Clayton Endowment Fund can only be utilized for Smith and Legion Park. City staff would also recommend the Parks, Forestry, and Recreation Committee's condition of the pledge being authorized with no restrictions. So essentially, some of the things that obviously you need to think about tonight or kind of talk about as council members is the amount that you're willing to pledge. There is the $100,000 request that has come up. There are options. So staff has kind of laid out some areas that you could pull it from if you don't want to just use specifically one. But then staff has also kind of reviewed the reason why it would probably make sense to utilize that one specific account. Because again, the only thing that can really truly be earmarked for is something in Smith and Legion Park. Whereas a lot of the other funds have the ability to potentially be used for some of our other parks and other long-term projects that we, have or are going to be looking into our CIP for next year and kind of revamping, everything from shelters to long-term planning to other things. So that's kind of what we have to kind of think about tonight.
And the amount that you've given us here is the spendable amount in the fund, so that there is an endowment, there is money that is not spendable.
Correct. So in
remains.
all of these accounts, there are specifically spendable amounts and then there are restricted, or, that every year they
Unspendable,
are unspendable. So these
except
are,
in the park impact fee.
yes, park impact fees, you technically could zero out that entire account, but the other ones are specifically the amounts that are available to be spent at the choosing of the city.
Okay, Ken,
Yes, my question is now, how much is the cost estimated for the inclusive playground?
well, I have several people, and we have the person who's designed that, who's
Okay, that's-
requested to speak, so we can, if you have other questions, then maybe we can have that person come. Do you have
Okay.
additional questions there?
Pardon?
Do you have additional questions that you want them to answer?
And not at this time, but I have some things to hand out. I
Oh,
have a
okay.
Handout as far as Smith Park.
All right, well, there are several people who have registered here tonight in favor of this request. And so I will read those names into the record. Aaron I'm 1135 Perry Drive has registered in favor. Sarah Mobersteg has registered. She's at 6084 Sunrise Drive. Soraya Strobel has registered 885 Jefferson Street. Elena Reeves, 6727 7th Avenue. Morgan Arnold, 1118 Nelmar Road. Sam Villeneuve, 740 Hare Street. And Jason Julius, 730 Malone Drive, have all registered, not requesting to speak. We have one person who's registered who has requested to speak, and that's Christina Burr, 6826 Woodland Road. So Christina, you can come to the microphone. And Ken had a question about the total cost of the playground.
Christina Burr, 6826 Woodland Road. And really, I just wanted to make sure that I answered any questions that you had as a council. But also just to reiterate what Adam had said, hats off to the whole team at the city on that grant application. That's just amazing and wonderful. Like Adam said, though, it doesn't cover the whole cost of the project. And that's where I would just encourage you as a council to, if we hadn't gotten the news before this meeting and you were going to vote in favor of that 100,000, I'd encourage you not to change that vote tonight, because the city is watching you and they're looking to your leadership. And if you choose to cut that in half, all our donors here on out will choose to cut what they are going to donate in half too. And this is a great project and the grant is going to be huge. But we still have work to do to get it to that fully funded ideal plan. And I know it's going to be amazing when we do. And so we just really appreciate your full support on it. I'm glad to answer any questions you have.
And so Ken's question was, do you have a total figure? So maybe you and
I can take
Adam-
that. I can
Go
take
for
that
it.
one. Yeah. So in the actual grant submission, we had a total of $1,920,275. And so what that encompassed was $1 million essentially of playground equipment, and then about $920,275 that was made up of all of the work to essentially put that equipment in. So that would have been the excavation, the landscaping, concrete work that was being done, pavement, sewer laterals, water service, curb and gutter, crushed aggregate, pretty much all of the supplies. And then there was a contingency that was put in there. And then obviously the engineering and the permitting costs that would encompass that. So there was about $1 million that was specifically put into the grant for, possible equipment. And then we had about $920,000 of actual, supplies, work, everything else you can think of.
And what wasn't covered then?
And so then what wasn't covered was anything that was potentially new. So when we submitted this grant, we were not able to submit anything to do anything to the stone shelter because that's an existing facility. So when you've heard the conversations or what, the group has been actively kind of fundraising for has been potentially to, refurbish those. That we've got an estimate right now, again, of about $100,000 has been for that. Then specifically, there have been some other items that have kind of come up in regards to signage, which I think was about $25,000, if I remember correctly.
Correct.
There was a pavilion that has been talked about that has been looked at to potentially go into that facility. It's about $50,000 if no, that was 90, wasn't it?
The covered pavilion, if you include the accessible tables and the cement pathway with it, along with the fencing, that whole package, you'd be looking at about 150,000 for that. And then you said the accessible bathroom about 100,000 and the signage about 25,000. So you're, about 275,000 not covered by the grant. And then our goal is to have a long-term maintenance fund as well. So that 275,000 is not including establishing a long-term maintenance goal. And then there is room in the space designed by Delta 3 and with the city to include additional pieces of equipment if we had donors in the community that were passionate about bringing a particular type of item to the design team for us to consider beyond what is in the grant, our high priority list for the grant as well. So, in particular, I think that earmark of the bathroom being right at 100,000 should speak to the council as something that would be good for the city as a whole and something that a lot of donors have brought up as an item that they feel in many ways has city responsibility behind it.
Okay, other questions on this project? Ken, you want to pass out something about Smith Park?
Okay. This is about Smith Park. And I want the city manager has a copy already. And also the city clerk. I'd also like to have a copy go to Bob Blow and the media, if they're here as well. So I've given it to those two. Okay. I don't know how well you can hear me with this mask on, but I believe what I have to say here is pertinent, even though with this big change as far as the amount of money. First of all, I would say that I'm very much in favor of the project. So my words are not meant to be something to put down the project. So don't take my words that way. But I wanted to say a few things back on, and some of these are for the new Parks and Rec Director. Back on the 27th of January, I visited 3 shelters on that date. The Harrison Park shelter. I live next to the Harrison Park. I viewed the shelters at Smith Park, the wood shelter, which is on the, what side is that?
North
Near-
side.
I got to get the direction right, and then the stone shelter. My first comment is mainly for the Parks and Rec Director. In looking at these shelters, I would rate the maintenance as far as painting as being substandard. And I don't need to, I believe, go into all the things that I looked at, but my recommendation is that we should be hiring a professional painter to paint our shelters here in the city of Platteville. The workmanship would be a better quality than what I viewed at those 3 shelters. And also, I believe it's important because I believe that the area that's higher elevation, difficult to get at, would be safer with someone that's hired as professional and not be something that is responsibility of people that are working for Parks and Recreation. So that's one thing. General maintenance needs to be improved. Years ago, I viewed all the shelters with another person. And at that time, considerable maintenance was needed. I'm just giving you 3 places where now yet we see the need for maintenance. Next is my point about needs. When I look at the $100,000, I'm concerned about what are the needs of the other shelters in Legion, in the Legion field. So what do they need? So what I'm recommending there is that I assume it'll be, for example, Parks and Rec Director, do a survey of what the needs are for handicap accessibility and other maintenance for these different parks as far as the shelter. And the whole park in general, whatever there is. Then, so that's survey should be in relation to the money that is coming from the first 2 donations here that are only to go to Smith and Legion Park. So what are the needs for all the other parks and places? Next one is a survey of all the other shelters. For example, Harrison is just one of them that do need also handicap accessibility. And looking at, for example, Harrison Park, which I said I live next to, that particular shelter has poor roofing. This is the second time that it has been rusting. Years ago, I was a person to inform the city that you need to do something about this roof. It's rusting. It is now rusting again. I informed the Parks and Recreation Director of that point in December. So that we know is something that must be done. When I look at that particular shelter at Harrison Park, I believe a decision has to be made whether we're going to work on retrofitting that shelter with handicap accessibility and putting a new roof on and also putting new sides on because the doors are too small. So the question to me is it better just to tear it down and build something new? So to me, that's a very important question. And then I've given you a handout here as far as Smith Park. And it is a historic park and the shelter there is historic. I've looked at the shelter in my visit on the 27th of January. And in my opinion, the shelter is too small. And that since it's historic, I frankly believe we should consider building a new shelter in place of this stone shelter. The stone shelter would stay in place, but a new shelter would be built at some other location on Smith Park. So this is my thinking on it, that we shouldn't be using that one. I think we should be considering the possibility of building a different shelter. So when I look at all this, my recommendations are, as far as 100,000, we could table until after the needs are known for the different parks in the city. Or we could make a donation of $25,000 to show city support with no restrictions if an amount is wanted immediately. And the third thing is consider the construction of a new shelter with, as I have learned, there's the possibility other funding would be available. And so I think those are my points. I had a form here somewhere, maybe it got lost or something in this part, but there's some things I wanted to point out. But anyway,
Okay, Ken, as you look for that,
May I-
does anyone else here on the council have questions?
Terms of the stone shelter being historic, has there been discussions or have there been any preliminary designs in terms of keeping that the historic nature of the shelter while still being able to do the bathroom remodel?
Yes, so to kind of answer your question and a few of Ken's there. We have looked at the stone shelter with Delta 3 and with engineers at Cummings who volunteered to actually come out and take a look too. And we can update that stone shelter to include 2 individual family bathrooms and keep the rest of the stone shelter intact. We would need to widen the doorway to be able to make it accessible, but that is an option. To Ken's point, first, I have to say, I love that the Platteville Inclusive Playground is encouraging the council as a whole to look at inclusiveness and that you're looking at accessibility throughout the city. That's a wonderful thing. And I'd welcome the council to continue to explore that down the road, but I don't feel that changes the immediate need of this project, nor do I feel like the needs of other shelters should encourage you to not fully fund the current need, because this is a grant that we have, money that we have, a project that we have that's moving forward, and waiting on it isn't really an option if we're going to take advantage of the money that we already have. So I love that you're looking at it, but I would say, in my opinion, that would be a separate discussion with the council as far as the other shelters. We had looked at the idea of including accessible bathrooms in our new picnic pavilion. In fact, we had talked with the city about that as an option and an alternative to remodeling the stone shelter. And really, that is up to the city. We would be welcome to including accessible bathrooms in our covered picnic pavilion adjacent to the playground and leaving the stone shelter as is if the council desires that. Feedback from the city from a maintenance standpoint was they weren't interested in adding additional bathrooms to have to maintain, that it would be easier from a city maintenance protocol, which we completely understand, to simply remodel the bathrooms that were in the stone shelter. But if you wanted to use that 100,000 to create bathrooms in the covered pavilion, as opposed to remodeling the stone shelter, we would not be against that. We would just leave it to we deferred to the city and staff recommendation that remodeling the stone shelter was the better choice from a maintenance standpoint in regards to long-term bathroom maintenance.
so that
And Adam, you may have more to say on that, but that was kind of how I recall the conversations going.
So do I get correctly that you're saying that you may build accessible bathrooms at another place?
No, I'm not
No.
saying that. I'm saying we would only do that if that's what the council and the city desired. Our plan was to remodel the stone shelter to make them accessible. If that is
And
decided not to be the desire of the council, then we'll revisit it.
but I believe what Ken may be referring to is you've mentioned putting in a pavilion that has picnic tables and things in it. And I believe you just said that if the city determined that it would be better to add the bathrooms there, you would not oppose that.
I would not oppose that. I think that would actually be an ideal potential alternative. The idea of the covered pavilion is to have it adjacent to the inclusive playground in the fenced-in area, so that if you're having a family picnic or a class is going there for school, or you're there for a birthday party, while it's not unreasonable to ask them to go to the stone shelter to go to the bathroom, if the bathrooms were right there and they were accessible, that certainly would make it easier on all families and all parties involved, whether you were a teacher there monitoring the class or whether you were a parent or a grandparent there. I think that would be an ideal alternative
So what I really hear you saying is the important thing here, regardless of where they are handicap accessible bathrooms, whether it be remodeled in the stone shelter or added to a pavilion that is envisioned. That's not really, you would leave that to the staff and to the engineering group.
Absolutely.
But here, the real question is about a handicap accessible bathroom
Absolutely.
or
We can't-
handicap accessible bathrooms.
Right. We can't put in an inclusive playground and then not have a bathroom available that's accessible. It just, they don't go together. You have to have both.
Kind of leaves one leg short.
Yes.
Okay, any other questions? Isaac, do you have questions? Just a minute. We're going
I
to go
wish
to
to-
Isaac now first. Isaac?
I don't have any questions or comments. I think, it would be nice to have the restrooms in the new building that you're possibly gonna be building there. But unfortunately, I think if the existing building doesn't get remodeled this time, with the way the budgets are, I don't foresee that building getting remodeled for quite some time. But again, leave that up to the staff, but I would like to see, the building that we have now be utilized and be potential. And I think this is probably gonna be the only time where the funds are available to do that. So, but if city staff were to say and recommend that the restrooms should be in a new building instead, I'd be all for that as well. So.
Lynn, do you have questions or comments?
I don't have any questions. My comment was going to be similar to Isaac's, where there's a plan in place, and I think a lot of time, a lot of effort that went into this plan. I do think that everything should be conducive to looking forward for the city. So I'm good with the way it looks. And if it works for the city, for what we already have with the shelter, let's do that too. I'm all for this to happen. So, yeah.
Okay, Kathy, do you have any questions?
I don't have questions, but I do have some comments. I'm very much in favor of the project. I think it's absolutely awesome and mind-boggling that the city received the grant for the project. Kudos to Chrissy and your whole team for all that you've done. In some of the conversations that I've been having with community members, and I brought this up at our last meeting, is a concern that the grant didn't cover expenses for the restrooms in the stone shelter. So with the request, I would lean towards approving the full amount for the stone shelter. The stone shelter is obviously historic. Updating that is obviously necessary. If you haven't been there for a while, you need to go check it out. It's not something that is pristine. I would want the historic integrity of that building to be maintained, realizing that, changes would have to be made to it. And I do appreciate the fact that your fundraising group is mindful that a maintenance fund is going to be a key thing. My one comment was, stronger comment actually, is with the request that no restrictions. I would like to see the city allocate the full up to the $100,000 out of the Orlo Clayton endowment with the strict purpose of doing the restrooms in the stone shelter. And it's that endowment was set up specifically for the park. The stone shelter covers the entire park. And those are just my thoughts.
Okay, Jason?
Christina, what would be your thoughts in terms of like that type of restriction? How much do you feel like that would potentially impact donations?
A great question. While obviously our first choice would be completely unrestricted funds, but I think that the second best choice would be 100,000 dedicated towards I would prefer it to be towards the stone shelter remodel and the pavilion. If you had, because what if the bathroom remodel comes in at 80,000? Well, that's 20,000 we could use for adding, 2 accessible picnic tables to our picnic pavilion. So, if you wanted to restrict it to the bathroom remodel and the picnic pavilion, accessible features, I think that would be my second choice. Absolutely, Kathy, you're right. The bathroom takes highest priority. I mean, you wouldn't dedicate the funds over to the covered pavilion before you finish the bathroom remodel, because that's the most important. But I would just hate to have funds lose out, where we have one less picnic table that's accessible at our pavilion, and the bathroom remodel came in under budget, and we could have used that to furnish the inclusive playground more fully.
Eileen.
I agree with a lot of what's already been said. I think Ken brings up a very good point about the stone shelter. As much as possible to keep it intact. I understand what you're saying about having to modify it somewhat for bathrooms, and I have no issue with that. But at the same time, I'm not interested in limiting this $100,000. I think that your organization, your group, has done a great job working with the city to plan this inclusive playground. And I think that certainly the bathrooms need to be updated whether this project would have happened or not. So yes, doing the bathrooms is very important to me, but I don't necessarily think we have to say the $100,000 goes just for that. It goes for the whole program, and the whole program is going to need bathrooms. So you're not going to get the inclusive playground without it. So I echo a little bit of what everybody said, including Ken. I like the stone shelter, Ken. I'd like to see it kept. If it ends up that the pavilion is the place that gets the bathrooms instead, and the city decides to do something else with that stone shelter, I have no issue with that, but I would like it to be maintained.
Okay, Ken, you had additional questions?
No, I guess it's just what I believe in as far as the needs. We have the need for other projects, and so if we don't have money for other projects, where are we going to get the money? So my point basically is that we're doing something here and we don't know our needs. We haven't studied. And that's both for Legion area and also the rest of the parks.
Okay, I'll weigh in here. I fully support this project and the allocation of $100,000. I would hope that as we make a motion, that we would say allocated. I understand, Kathy, what you're saying. I think the bathrooms are very important. While I feel that it's highly unlikely to happen, somebody may come along and say, I want to name the bathrooms, I want the bathroom remodel. I'm willing to give the $100,000 to redo the bathrooms, but I want my name on it. So
Somebody
I
out
would
there,
hope,
we would love that.
yeah, I mean, so I would hope that when we talk about this 100,000, we might say the first priority shall be the completion of accessible bathrooms wherever they would be in Smith Park. But leave the room for if somebody really, really wants to name the bathrooms, we give them that option. And we don't have to come back here and redo a motion to support this project. But I could see the 100,000 as a first priority for the bathrooms, accessible bathrooms. And, I think that, I'm not willing to try to say whether they should be in the stone shelter, they should be in the pavilion. I'm really not, I don't really have that degree. So that would be my thought. But, first priority to me should be the bathrooms. So.
My point again is I'd like them to consider another location as far as the bathrooms.
I think they are. The city is.
Keep the stone shelter.
I don't think anybody's talking about getting rid of the stone shelter. The question is, when it comes to the bathrooms, if it's possible to do it in the stone shelter. Isaac, I 100% agree with you. And it is not a shining example. It is not a shining star in that park. And there is an opportunity here to put a little shine on that star. And, that would be my preference, because I don't know where the money's going to come from another time either. If it, as long as we're doing the spruce up. And, I think that when we found out there weren't handicap accessible bathrooms in Smith Park, we all were a little bit appalled and said, we need to do a full inventory and see what other areas. So Ken, thank you for looking at other areas, but this is, I'm sure that this is going to be on Bob's radar as he's sitting over there furiously taking notes. So
Our first meetings that we had, we talked about that. so.
we talked about bathrooms.
We did, yeah.
Well, there you
Imagine
go.
what we talk about in the city. There you go.
There you go.
I thought it's very pertinent.
Mhm.
I'll go with you on the visit still.
And Barb, you just kind of made me think of a point too of, especially with the condition that the stone shelter is in right now, you put in this nice brand new facility and you have this like old shelter right next to it. Aesthetically, I don't know, how that's going to match either. So yeah, it would be nice to try to incorporate that into this project too.
And spruce it up. I mean,
Mhm.
it's beautiful. I mean,
Yeah.
it's beautiful, but it's also in dire need of some tender loving care. So does anybody have a motion that they'd like to offer?
Or I'd make a motion.
Okay,
So before I state my motion, you heard what the council says that, we'd like to see something done with the restrooms that are already there. Both that being in mind, this motion is not going to have any restrictions to it. So I moved to the city of Platteville to pledge the $100,000 to come out of the Orland Clayton Endowment Fund to be utilized with restrictions towards the creation of an inclusive playground at Smith Park.
Second,
okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the $100,000 donation to the Inclusive Playground Project without restriction. We have a second. Candace will vote.
Arts,
yes.
Parrot,
Yes.
Shanley,
Yes.
Doss,
Yes.
Killian,
No,
Nichols,
Yes.
Cop,
Yes.
motion carries.
Thank you. And thank you all for coming tonight. And we look forward to this project. Now, what would we say? It doesn't really take root, I guess. Comes out of the
Take
ground.
shape.
I don't know. Take shape.
Taking shape.
There we go.
Take shape, become a
shape.
reality. Absolutely. Thank you so much for working with us on this. We couldn't be more excited to see it come to life.
Okay, great. Okay, the next action item on our agenda is the Platteville Housing Authority loan proposal. And
I'll take
let's
this
see.
one to start.
Yeah, I see Joyce's here, but
I can take
okay,
it.
Adam.
Yeah, so obviously the Platteville Housing Authority's mission is to assist in the expansion of housing opportunities for the extremely low and low income citizens of Platteville by promoting safe, affordable, and sanitary housing conditions. The Platteville Housing Authority is autonomous from the city of Platteville and sustains most of its operations through funding provided by HUD, the Housing and Urban Development, or the Department of Housing and Urban Development. The Housing Authority has a memorandum of understanding in place with the city of Platteville. So what is in front of you tonight essentially is the Housing Authority has been talking about this for a couple of months. They are requesting $20,000 from the American Rescue Plan Act funds to provide security deposit assistance to Housing Authority program participants. There are a few resources that provide security deposit assistance. Security deposits are typically equivalent to a month's rent and can range anywhere from $500 to $1,000. Assistance granted would be based on an application process and would be limited to $400 per applicant. The applications would be reviewed by the Housing Authority board members monthly, and funding would be administered by the Housing Authority. Assistance provided would be distributed in one of two ways, either repaid to the Housing Authority by the property owner at tenant move out, or not repaid and given in a grant format. If the assistance is repaid, funding would revolve long-term and allow for assistance to other participants. The Housing Authority reviewed the council's request to have funding repaid by the participant. The Housing Authority would not request assistance be repaid by the participant because it would cause a financial hardship. So when they talked about this, they really said the way this would be set up is essentially the payment would be made to the landlord, and then the landlord obviously would be required to give the security deposit back to the Housing Authority. So the recommendation that was made by the Housing Authority members is that the Common Council grant $20,000 in funding to go to the Housing Authority to create this program. City staff has also reviewed this request further with council leadership and would recommend the following additions be made to this proposal. Before an application is reviewed and authorized by the Housing Authority, the applicant should exhaust with assistance from the Housing Authority Executive Director all eligible grant and loan programs available before applying for the program. Then the second would be adding language about Wisconsin State Statute 704.28 to the program. The statute addresses withholdings from and return of security deposits. Specifically, it will need to be clear in the application process, the property owner or the landlord, whoever you want to call it, needs to return the security deposit given by the Housing Authority within 21 days or about 3 weeks of the tenant leaving the premises. So as you can see here, what I included is basically a copy of that statute and kind of has the specific information of where that comes from. So potentially what is up for action tonight by the council is if you want to grant, a certain amount. They have asked for 20,000 because that was kind of what was discussed when we went through our ARPA kind of work session, was allocated about $20,000 that could be used. And specifically what we would be looking for from staff would be to put in kind of the 2 additional parameters that we have kind of discussed and reviewed. So I guess we'll open it up to any questions, and I believe Joyce is here. Absolutely.
Joyce, do you want to come?
Joyce Boss, 1590 West Gulf Drive, Platteville. So you've had a couple weeks to look at this and to discuss it and to think about it. And I'm here to ask you to authorize the $20,000 from the American Rescue Plan to assist the low income, very low income and homeless that reside in our community, that will help with their security deposit. And I'm here right now. If you have any questions, I'll try my best to answer them.
Okay, questions or comments?
I
Kathy?
do have a question, just in, maybe I'm not reading it here, but so the process would be that a potential tenant would enter into some sort of a contract, and the landlord would be paid the security deposit, correct, out of this fund?
Yeah, so what would happen is essentially a applicant would essentially come to the Housing Authority and indicate, as they work with the executive director on trying to apply for housing, the intention would be they would try to go through every possible grant program that is already available. If, after kind of doing that, if they qualify for this, then the executive director can essentially have them fill out this application that's in your packet. The application then would then go to the Housing Authority board to actually be acted on. And I believe as they indicated, there's about 10 that they would look at doing at a year, and it would kind of be a first come, first served basis. So when they get applicants, they'll review it. What'll happen then is if it's approved by the Housing Authority, the Housing Authority will essentially issue a security deposit to the landlord. The landlord then, by state statute, has to return that. They obviously can deduct expenses if there are issues, but then any portion that is left has to be returned. So it is required within 21 days after, unless they have enough evidence to showcase, hey, we gave a $400 security deposit and there was X, Y, and Z that equaled $400. Well, then obviously the Housing Authority is not going to get that back. But anything that is, within that realm, if it's completely 400, it goes back to the Housing Authority and then essentially can be reissued again. Or if for whatever reason, they would have issues, then the money is going to be drawn up. But essentially that's going to be the Housing Authority's responsibility now, is they're going to be tasked with this $20,000, reviewing the applications and then ensuring that, they're getting the money back from those landlords. And if not, then it would just be like any other process. They would have to, go through legal means to try to retrieve that.
That answered my question. Yep.
Okay, Jason, questions?
Just one question in terms of the part where the exhausting the other options in terms of grants and loans, that's not going to put like any extra on the tenant, is it? Because I know that there's already a lot of steps and things that they have to go, but that wouldn't put any more hardship on them.
There's so few options for them to get assistance that it wouldn't put any extra strain on them.
Okay.
And of course, the director will be assisting them. And if there are available funds in any other area, they'll be assisted in trying to get those.
Thank you.
This is the first time that I'd heard the stipulations that the staff has made, and I'm total agreement with both of those.
Eileen,
No, I think my questions have been asked.
Ken. Lynn,
I just have one. So based on what I'm hearing, the process, the application will have to go to the board, right? So how much more time is that gonna put on the individual, which I'm sure they probably won't mind having to wait, but like if you guys only meet once a month, say somebody comes after you guys have met, so that means that person has to wait another month to find out, like, how does that process work? Does this slow this down? Is there any way this can be expedited while the person is waiting? That kind of, yeah.
The people that serve on the Housing Authority are very, very much committed to helping the citizens in Platteville. I see no problem with them having a special meeting between meetings.
But it shouldn't cause any hardship on that person. Okay.
Isaac, any questions?
Lynn just asked it. So,
Okay, so is it, the only question I have is, this is a $400 security deposit, up to $400 for security deposit. In that I haven't rented recently, would this cover the security deposit?
Probably not. It would be a great assistance in that.
Okay, so it would be a great assistance. So then on the repay, all right, so let's say that just for lack of a better amount, let's say the security deposit was $1,000. So the tenant ends up paying 600 and the housing authority gives the landlord 400. So now at the end, when the tenant moves out, and if there are damages, are they assessed at the same percentage? In other words, I gave 600, you gave 400, there's $400 worth of damage. The housing authority gets nothing, I get 600.
I would have no problem in putting a third stipulation on that if there's damage to the property, that the housing authority gets the $400 back, encouraging the tenant to treat their housing as their home.
So the housing authority would be paid first, then the security deposit back.
That would be my recommendation.
Okay, good. I don't know if that's kind of in there.
No, that's something that essentially can be written into the agreement, the finalized agreement when this is an application. There obviously will have to be something that is physically written as far as a legal agreement or some type of a contract. And so that could be a stipulation that could be put in there.
Okay. Well, I think
That doesn't need to be added right now then.
If you want, you certainly can. If you want to make sure that it's ironclad, that's up to you guys as a council.
Okay.
One more. And so is there a reason why it's only $400?
In looking at what other places that do similar type of work that we're doing, that's what they are doing.
Okay, folks, do we want to, does somebody want to offer a motion?
I move to adopt $20,000 in funding to the Platteville Housing Authority. Funding is to be administered by the Housing Authority with the conditions state statute 704.28 is added into the program language, and applicants will work with the executive director to exhaust all available grant and loan programs in conjunction with application submission.
And do you want to add that the return of the deposit comes to the housing authority first?
Yes, we'll add that.
And deposit return to the housing authority first.
That will help us revolve it and help more and more people.
Okay. So we have a motion
Second,
and a second. Candace will vote.
Arts,
Yes.
Parrot,
Yes.
Shanley,
yes.
Doss,
Yes.
Killian,
yes,
Nichols,
Yes.
Cop.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. It's not easy to develop new programs, Joyce. Thank you very much. Okay, let's move on then to the information and discussion items in our packet. First of all, the resolution authorizing the city manager to submit applications to the Wisconsin Department of Transportation for the 2022 to 2026 Transportation Alternative Program Award Cycle.
We've been working with grant writer Angie Wright to do 3 different transportation alternative program grants. They would realistically be awarded for 2024 through 2026. And the sidewalk plan that was presented in January showed those 3 potential upgrades or construction. The 3 trails, we'll call the Mound View Park Trail, would be an upgrade of the gravel path to a paved and lighted trail from the connection at the Roundtree Branch Trail near the bridge behind Jane and Stone up to Mitchell Hollow Road through Mound View Park, continuing past Farady's and connecting to Fairfield Drive. The schedule would be to do the design in 2023 using only city funding, and then construction in 2024 for a little over 1.7 million. Since the TAP grants are 80/20, the city portion would be 343,000. The Main Street Connection Trail would include an expansion of the trailhead parking next to the dog park and construction of a new trail from the connection to the Roundtree Branch Trail near the dog park along the berm on the old railroad bed to connect with existing sidewalks on East Main Street near the skate park. This one would be scheduled for the year after, design in 2024 and construction in 2025. We would be responsible for the entire amount of design, but the city portion of construction would be 163,800. The Southeast Rail Corridor Trail would be a brand new trail, paved and lighted, from the connection along the Roundtree Branch, along Business 151, get onto that old railroad bed and continue out to East Side Road to connect with the existing trail on East Side Road, out by where the intersection of Evergreen Road is. The schedule for that would be design in 2025 with only city funding. And sorry, the little typo here, construction in 2026 for a little over 1.7 million, which would put the city at just under 350,000. And so I have the years and the amounts that we would need to pledge as part of our CIP. And basically what we need to do is between now and April, in order to be awarded any of these grants, we would need to submit a resolution authorizing these applications.
Okay, questions? Ken?
Well, I'd like to find out how much money the city is going to be putting into this as far as the 20%. So I wrote down these numbers: 343,000, 163,000, 349,000. This comes out to 856,575, something like that. Is that correct? That this is the portion that we have to pay for these grants? Is that correct?
Plus design,
Plus the designs,
right?
yes.
So they're detailed on the bottom of that first page. 141, 343, 73, 163, 146, and 349. So it would be all 6 of those amounts. Is
So
that
the city
correct?
is paying all of those.
Yep.
Yes.
The city
And my
pledged.
next question is, where's the money coming from as far as the city paying all those?
The idea is that those would be in our CIP budget
Yeah, but
for those
what if-
particular years.
But where does the CIP money come from?
So essentially, it's going to be a combination of, that's going to be the question we're going to have to do as a city and as a council, is you're going to have to consider either that it has to 100% come from reserves, taxes, or you're essentially going out and you're borrowing. So the question would be, that's the analysis we would have to do as staff when we look at the CIP, is every year, we do the same thing. We come with every single project we can think of, and we roughly try to fund about $700 worth of non-road and street CIP related projects. And historically, we've been using a combination of tax levy and then also our reserves, which again, if we keep depleting our reserves, we're eventually going to get to a point where that's going to go, we're not going to have a reserve. So those are all the conversations we have to look at as a staff, where potentially, and obviously as the council, and a combination of that, is what is that going to take? Well, potentially it may make more sense to, if we're doing a road project and we typically borrow between $1 and $2 million. When you're looking at some of these numbers, $160,000 on a $1 to $2 million borrowing is not going to be that drastically of a difference in regards to the interest rate that you're paying and everything else. Now that's also going to play into, we do have our financial policy where we do only try to borrow the amount of debt that we have paid off in the year before. So again, those are all things that we're going to kind of have to look at and play out. But essentially what this means is, again, we may not be awarded the grant, but if we are, then as a city, we have to come up with how we're going to cover the rest. And it's going to be a combination of multiple factors. It's going to be reserves. It's going to be utilizing the tax base. Potentially that could cause an increase. Then we have to then justify to the constituents and obviously to residents that there's a cost benefit analysis. You're getting, almost you're looking at over $2 million in funding coming. We have to cover our portion of it. That's the cost benefit analysis. So there's a lot of things we'll have to look at or play through when we go through that scenario.
Could also
But
be
when I
funded.
look at this, though, I think about the city streets.
Right.
This is gonna take money out of doing city streets. And how many years behind are we on city streets? 45, 55 years behind?
Right. So our recommendation,
so,
obviously,
like,
as staff would be
How can we
not to do that.
justify trails
Right.
versus city streets?
Yep. So I think the recommendation that would probably come from staff would be that we would not want to decrease the road budget that we have typically done to cover these projects. I think the recommendation we would make is that's the cost benefit analysis we're going to provide you. Is, we still want to ensure that we're doing that $1 to $2 million of roads, because just as you indicated, Ken, we're 100 years behind. So we can't keep kicking that can down the curb.
Yeah.
So
We need to increase the road budget. Increase.
yep, and that I'll bring it to you. Certainly, that's an option that can be considered. And we may have to look at that. You're not wrong. I mean, potentially we may have to do that. So what we'll have to look at as staff is our analysis obviously is going to be, all right, as we said, there's about $700 that typically is not 700,000 that is not usually roads. That's going to be the question for the council, is if there are other projects that, we have this comprehensive CIP, we're now going to put this in here with the understanding that, all right, we got to fund these. So now comes those conversation pieces of what are the things that we have to either delay or potentially do in a different year? Or does it make more sense to where we tack it on to what we typically have borrowed and look at the analysis of, is that really going to have that drastic of an impact? Or as you just indicated, maybe we do then have to explain to the public why there is a tax increase and it's increasing because of X, Y, and Z.
But I'd rather increase my taxes for something in the city. Trails are fine, but maybe the people that like to use the trails ought to start giving in money to the trails. Maybe that should be the fundraiser
That
for
is,
trails.
that is an acceptable alternative, is to get, to do fundraising to support that 20%. I mean, if these trails people want to do that, that's certainly, that's certainly acceptable also. And there are potentially DNR grants that could also be used to reduce that 20%. We're going to be learning more about some of those. Some of those we have to be careful about because of restrictions on use by snowmobiles. But, I've been told that there are some DNR grants that can reduce that 20% and still be used as snowmobile trails. We need to explore all of those options, including, like I say, fundraising and DNR and other grants to reduce that 20%.
But also we have to consider the maintenance of the trail. Who's going to pay for the maintenance as far as paving over a period of time? Who pays for the lights?
Yeah. No.
The city pay for the lights?
Yes,
the
the
city
city
pay
would
for
have
the
to
light?
pay for the electricity for the lights, if that's,
Probably not if we had solar lights.
It's an option.
yeah, that's always an option, but it's
These are all things we
kind of
have to
hard to
consider.
Oh, yeah.
get solar in a shaded area.
All right. There's always the question of money. And speaking of the question of money, I believe that Adam forwarded, I was on the league call today. There's a monthly roundtable call. I'm sure everybody gets informed of it, but on occasion I actually listened to it. I wanted to listen to it today because I knew there would be some talk about some of these grant monies that are out there. And there was also, I believe that after that call, Adam forwarded you all a 5-page idea of how the state perhaps has grown its budget by over 30% in 5 years. And how municipalities have struggled to grow their budgets by 1%, and maybe more to local and less to. So take a look at that. All right, let's go on then to the fire station. Go ahead.
Just one question. I understand the Mountain View Park Trail and Main Street, but the Southeast Rail Corridor, is that all within the city?
Yes.
It's all within the city.
Mhm.
So where did that concept of that trail come up? I'm just thinking, we got the Roundtree Branch. We do have the Mountain View Park. Now there's the pedestrian walkway, sidewalk, whatever, on 151. How many is this?
This
Is this the
actually, I've walked this
pot
area.
of gold? I mean, is this everything that we could possibly be looking at for trails?
Heavens, no.
I mean, I look at
The-
the price tag for
Mhm.
design and construction of that Southeast Rail Corridor. And I guess just personally, I'd have to really be convinced that that's even,
It would, it ends up connecting, the area is basically going from behind Napa. Napa to toward the industrial park. And so if and when we have additional development at the hospital area, which we've talked about, and additional residences, et cetera, this kind of trail would make sense for new residential construction that would potentially happen along East Side Road, because that's where it connects. So not to say that you wouldn't have walking trails, you could walk down to the U-Haul and walk back, but this would give a pathway. We do not own the property. I don't see a trail possible going south of town along 8081, because that isn't in the city. That's in the township. So this would be in the city and under city. But it's a lot, yeah, there's a lot of work to be done on that.
The reason why they were listed in that order is that is the priority order that the Parks, Recreation and Forestry Committee recommended. And that's the priority order listed on the grant applications. So that, if we only get one, then we would get the Mound View first. If we got two, then we'd get the dog park or the Main Street corridor one.
So within the application, do you have to include all these? Or, how
Technically,
does
they were
that-
three separate
They're
applications.
three separate applications.
Right.
So
I'm just
I guess I
recommending-
would just be confused as to how we would react if the first two were no's and we got a commitment to do the Southwest Rail Corridor.
Yeah, so I think as a council, you always, and as a city, even if we get an award of a grant, we don't have to accept it. So I think that would be the conversation that would have to occur is with anything that we get awarded, it's a combination of looking to make sure the factors are there. Obviously, if we get awarded the grant, we want to try to find a way to make it work. But that is always an option where if there's concerns about funding and certain aspects, that certainly is an option you always have.
So Howard, do they go in with the priority number? Or
Yes.
do they just, so they do go in with the priority number?
Yes, there is.
So it does say priority one,
Yes.
priority two.
That's correct.
So we've prioritized them. So
Yes.
hopefully as others read them, they would not say, oh, we like three better than two or one.
Right.
Howard, if we could, based on the current lighting configuration that you have on there, now is that based on what the state recommends or requires on the size or?
The lighting,
Yep.
that's basically mimicking the lighting strategy on the Roundtree Branch Trail. Now, if we believe that that's too much lighting during the design process itself, we could always, reduce the lighting and put additional spacing between lights if that's what everybody feels is appropriate.
Guess what I was gonna get at is, based on the configuration of each one of these, is there a chance that we could get an estimated lighting cost per month on those? I mean, what Kenneth stated, not only the cost of installation of the lights, but what that runs every month.
Okay.
I use the East Middle Street to go out to Menards when I go out there, and I would tell you that lighting system on that trail, they kind of plain on that at night. And, at this time of year, you don't see much traffic at all in there, and he's still paying for electricity, not stuff that on there. So again, that's when the long-term budget you have to figure in for each one of these sections of trails you'd have to do. So I do like the idea of what Barbara stated, obviously with more money up front, but the solar lights, if we could do that. So
what I can do is I can use the figures that we have for what we pay for the lighting on the Roundtree Branch Trail and just do some comparisons based on that.
And Isaac, I said solar because I can remember at one point suggesting we do LEDs and it was too expensive to do, but guess what?
These are
Not so
now-
expensive to do anymore. So I think we have to be open to the fact that solar might be a way to go. All right, next then, I think we've gotten through that resolution. City motto submissions. My goodness.
Yeah.
Adam?
So this is more
No.
just for information. There's going to be a couple of, obviously, the next couple of council meetings, this will be discussed, but just to kind of bring you up to speed. So as part of being a safe, welcoming, and engaged community, our 2021 to 2023 City of Platteville Strategic Plan created a goal to adopt a mission statement that will increase the visibility and importance of Platteville history. So if you remember, during the Tuesday, June 22nd, 2021 meeting, the City of Platteville Common Council approved the following vision and mission statements that are in your packet. One of the other things that was also done with these statements was the Common Council approved holding a community-wide marketing challenge to develop a potential new motto statement. Previously, the city of Platteville has utilized the motto "Pioneering the Good Life." To move forward with the marketing challenge, the city asked for participation from residents in the month of September 2021 to help derive ideas for the city of Platteville's motto statement. Individuals interested in submitting a motto statement were asked to send their ideas to cityofplatteville@platteville.org. City employees are also being given the opportunity to express their thoughts and opinions regarding an official City of Platteville motto. Their thoughts will be shared with the Common Council during the February 22nd Common Council meeting. The top 5 motto choices will be selected by city staff and the Common Council. The plan moving forward is that the city will ask the community to vote for the motto they would like to see become official. The winning motto submission will then receive a $25 Platteville Chamber of Commerce gift certificate. So attached to the staff note are the various submissions we received from the public so far as possible motto options. So right now there is no planned budget or fiscal impact anticipated at this time. And so what I'm going to be looking for is that I'm looking for recommendations from city staff and the Common Council on which 5 mottos you would like to have moved to the next round for the community to officially vote on. I will be looking for department directors and the Common Council to review the submissions already submitted, as well as the submissions from city staff members at the February 22nd meeting. Potentially then at the March 8th Common Council meeting, we would be looking for a motion to proceed with conducting a voting campaign on the 5. So what you have right now in here are the sample submissions that we received so far. So your kind of homework assignment over the next 2 weeks here is to kind of look through these and kind of earmark which ones you think would be the top 5. And then potentially I will be bringing, hopefully from the employees that we have, we'll be submitting some. If not, I'll have to continually get on them, but we've gotten some already. But I'll potentially bringing you some more to kind of look at. And then the plan will be to kind of narrow those down to 5 that potentially then would go out as a marketing campaign that Jody and myself will work on. And then potentially have the community vote on a new winner. And that will be the slogan and kind of motto that we'll use going forward. So more to come.
More to come. Very interesting. Okay, anybody with questions? Otherwise, take a look through and start picking your 5 favorites, or if you can't find 5 favorites, then make up 5. How's that? Is that what you wanted?
Sure.
Make up a couple more. All right. Let us then move to Fire Station Professional Design Services RFP.
Yes, so in 2021, the city of Platteville completed a fire department comprehensive analysis, which determined the current location of the Platteville Fire Department would not be suitable for renovations or expansion. The analysis recommended the potential for a new fire station to be located at the former O.E. Gray Learning Center building located at 155 West Lewis Street. In 2021, the city of Platteville gained ownership of the Learning Center by entering into a transfer agreement with the school district of Platteville. In the spring of 2021, the city of Platteville submitted a community project funding request to Congressman Ron Kind's office, in which an $8 million request was submitted to the House Appropriations Committee. $7 million was authorized from the committee members to be included within the 2022 fiscal year appropriation cycle. The city of Platteville is awaiting final approval on whether this request will be authorized by the federal government. In continuing to move the needle, city staff is requesting proposals from qualified architects/engineer consultants to be part of a team to perform professional services for the design of a new fire station. The city is also requesting qualified architects and engineers consultants to review the potential for a new fire station to be combined with the current tenants of the O.E. Gray Learning Center, which would include the Platteville Senior Center and other service-based organizations. Design services shall include landscape design, architectural design, interior design, site, civil, plumbing, mechanical, electrical, and telecommunication engineering services. The design proposal should include the following phases for program verification. So the first thing we would be doing is schematic design, considering a standalone fire station and the additional buildings for current O.E. Gray tenants, or the potential to design a joint facility. There also would be the third option potentially would be if only the fire station could be the only item that could be located on that site as well. So then the design development would be to prepare detailed design documents, plan and specifications for the approved design and layout, construction documents where they would have plans, specifications, and contracts, and the potential for bidding and construction administrative services with site inspections bi-weekly. So the proposed project timeline that we're kind of looking at potentially doing here is to have the RFP available for distribution February 23rd of 2022. The deadline then for firms to submit would be March 25th, 2022. Then interviews would be as needed. So this would be a combination of potentially members of this Common Council, the Police and Fire Commission, as well as some members that have been involved in kind of the design of things we've dealt with before and potentially are doing marketing, as well as the fire department and city staff. Then potentially there would be a council review of all of the submissions on April 12th, 2022, and then a council determination at the April 26th, 2022 meeting. So as far as the budget and fiscal impact, so currently city staff is unsure of the potential budget or fiscal impact of this request. Potential bidders will be asked to break out the costs for conducting phase 1, 2, and 3 of the RFP. City staff are in the process of reviewing grant opportunities that would cover the cost of architectural services. Further, city staff are also reviewing the potential for receiving private donations to cover either the entire or a portion of the cost to complete the RFP. City staff is also analyzing available city funds to cover the cost of the proposal and will provide further recommendations after proposals have been received from potential firms. So what I'm looking forward to tonight, not tonight, but essentially over the next meeting here, is looking for the council to review the proposed RFP for any recommended changes or alterations that you would like to see. If you could please provide me with any recommended changes so I can incorporate those into an updated document for the council to consider for action at our next meeting. And as indicated, I would also be looking for the Common Council to officially authorize the dissemination of the RFP at the Tuesday, February 22nd Common Council meeting. So what you have in here is basically a draft of the RFP that has been put through. So what I'd be looking for is over the next 2 weeks for you to kind of review this, look for anything that you would like to see potentially altered or changed. There's obviously a couple of things I've already noted that need to be tweaked in here, just kind of going through it. But potentially what we would be looking for then is this to go out for potential bidders. We'd be looking for them to kind of do 3 phases, which would be phase 1 would be planning, essentially coming in here, looking at all options available, looking at the current site, potentially could everything that currently exists there be added with a fire station? If that doesn't work, is there the option, is there enough land there to kind of have, some multiple options of a fire station and a possible, whatever you want to call it, community center or potential space that could be utilized for the tenants that are currently there? Or potentially if their recommendation is no, the only thing that you are going to be able to do is have a fire station there. If that is the case, then to kind of, I think the question that you were kind of alluding to, Ken, is what happens then to the current tenants that are there? That's a discussion then that obviously we would have to have. I was at the last Commission of Agent meeting, and what I spoke to them was, our hope is that potentially we can have something that combines everything that's already there with a fire station. If it can't, then, we are definitely going to look at where could potentially those current tenants be located. As we've talked about, there are potentially some options here at City Hall where we have the space below us directly, used to be the former PD. There are office spaces there. So potentially I've had some conversations with some of the tenants that really just need an office space. There's the potential they could be relocated here. There's also the conversation then of what do we do if we are moving forward with putting a new fire station at Early Gray? What do we do with the existing fire station? Those are conversations then that we can have as well. Potentially that could be opened up to some space, or potentially that would be another RFP that we would be going out for to see what somebody could do with that available space. So there's a lot of conversations, obviously a lot of moving balls with this that we're going to be looking at, but essentially what we're looking for is to kind of get some idea and synopsis of quotes. What we've asked for in the RFP is for potential bidders to bid out on each phase. So there's the planning phase, the design phase, and then the bidding phase. So that way we get a better kind of cost benefit analysis of what each of those phases costs. And then we can make a determination. Potentially, if there's some grant funds that we can go after, we can use those potential bids to kind of solidify those grants and go after. There's some USDA grants that are available for about $1 million that can go towards planning. There's some other ones that we can potentially look at. But this is kind of the start. We are hopeful that we're going to hear, knock on wood, we'll hear something here by the end of this month in regards to where if we are going to be receiving that funding, but potentially we may not. So we've kind of been in a little bit of a holding pattern, but staff now is kind of making the determination and talking with council leadership that we can't really do that anymore. We got to kind of start being a little bit more proactive and looking at things. So we're kind of taking the ball and kind of running it with it to see potentially what we could get back for costs, and then look and kind of go from there. So.
Okay, questions or comments? Isaac, I'm starting down.
Not really, I guess. as in, excuse me, we were in a discussion with the acquiring the property. I guess I'd let my thoughts be known about the fact that I think it should be a new building, not utilizing any of the older ones. Buildings at some point outlive their economical feasibility and their cost, as well as the construction, it'll add time and cost to that project as well. So actually, that's one reason why the school system got rid of the building. So when I think, there's 2.9 acres there that the city owns now and with 4th Street access. So I would like to see utilized up to the max of, personally, I think 2 different buildings, but if the engineers come back and say they could do it all in one, again, I'd like to see hear what the chief's fire department, what his thoughts are, if they want to be a standalone or, but he'd have to have some pretty good thinking as to why they should be standalone, not just because it's their personal belief. And the second thing is, as the council leadership as well as the city been in contact with the Petersons at all, we've discussed that as well. I mean, there's another 0.34 acres that possibly could be, when we look at that, see the plan get drawn and all of a sudden them say, well, if you had approached us, we would have built this for your building and we could have changed more. And so that would alleviate some of Kathy's concerns she has on the corner site restrictions. So, but again, I think it's something that even without not knowing what we're going to get from, or if we're going to get anything from the state, that the city should be proactive and keep working on this, because at some point it has to be done. So that's it.
Ben,
Questions?
Ken,
My question is, when you get down to selecting a firm, are you going to go out and conduct in-person visits to a number of locations where these people have built?
Yeah, so that's certainly, depending on where they are, definitely. So that is one of the requests that we have in this RFP, is that they provide us with examples of kind of multitude of fire stations. One is, as kind of Isaac alluded to, would be a standalone fire station. So we want to see those. And then potentially what we've asked for are ones that have kind of a community center type component, or, multi-spaces where it's a fire station possibly combined with, could be anything. So I think we're definitely open to, when we see the firms that apply and looking at their examples, I don't think we're going to be flying anywhere, but hopefully if it is somewhere that is close, or that has examples that either would be in the, Wisconsin, the Minnesota, Chicago, Illinois or Iowa area, we certainly, I think it would make sense to do some field trips. I don't disagree with that at all.
Eileen,
I guess I'd have to go back and look at them, but are we talking only the exterior design and the interior design? We're not talking the equipment that goes in there? Do you know what I mean?
No, so this essentially would just be there could be some equipment conversations, but primarily this is the building itself. So this is the building itself, and then the fire equipment is a separate, that's already there. So it's basically taking the existing, it's building a new fire station based on that. So there could be some components of equipment that may be needed, and that would be part of the analysis. They're obviously going to do a review of what is currently in the fire station and try to incorporate that into a new building. But as you alluded to, depending on, as our building was built in 1960, there may be some equipment components that we may need, whether that's decontamination, anything else. Ryan, am I missing anything?
There'd be some additionals that I think they'd calculate in. It's required to have like an exhaust removal system and different components now in modern fire stations and what they call hot zone and cold zone areas to keep the contaminants out. But that would all be in this figure. The stuff maybe, Barb, that they potentially would include separately would be maybe the interiors, that would go with it, the tables and chairs for meeting rooms and the day room and the kitchen areas as maybe a separate cost, analysis. But the main focus now is the required components for it to be functional without the furnishings.
I guess at some point that I would be interested in knowing what kind of distinction there is in that because of the cost that it's going to be, the wiring, for example, and things like that. Is that going to be included in the projected cost? Okay.
It-
So
it
so
sh-
the-
and
the guts
plumbing
of it-
would,
The guts of it
yeah.
would be there. if you
Yeah,
wanna
so-
call it that.
I think just what we would look at is, when we get these firms in here and look at the potentials, the conversation is going to go exactly to what Isaac kind of alluded to, is there's there's multiple facets to this, but one is, okay, you have an existing building. So the recommendation we're going to be looking for is, does it make sense to take that existing building and either retrofit it or expand off it a fire station? That answer could be yes, or it could be just as I said, they may come back and go, it's way too expensive to do that. You might as well just demolition and start from scratch. So that's kind of what we're looking for, is kind of their expertise on what do they recommend? Because just as you alluded to, if it's wiring, well, you know, if you're retrofitting, well, then everything has to be up to code. It's got to be sprinklered. It's got to be everything else. So that's the cost benefit analysis we're going to be looking at this firm to kind of look at and go, what makes sense? Because there is some historic significance to that building. I mean, it certainly is. I mean, a lot of people, you know, but that all plays into, it's a cost benefit analysis.
Yeah, and I guess I'm not interested in the existing building as much as I was thinking back to the trail.
Yeah.
And the estimates on the trail.
Right.
And so, and just so that we're clear on what we're getting for the money that we might get as an estimate. And then you look over here and say, well, all of this has to be added in later. So,
So
you know, what is that cost?
Yeah, I'm assuming the furniture, any kind of fixtures, and your fire equipment itself, and other maybe equipment like for workout equipment and things like that. So I'm assuming furniture, fixtures, and equipment are not included, but that the components that are essential to a fire facility are included. So if that's bigger water mains or better fire hydrant, I have no clue, more electricity.
From what I've seen on them typically is your phase one planning design, that schematic type is just looking for the space needs and fitting of stuff. And then the design phase is truly the floor plan designs, which is going to be your, like Barb said, your electrical, your water plans, HVAC plans. It's truly what they would need to send out to get phase three, which is bidders for what it would cost to do that. And they have typically also added those spots for the furnishings, you know, to include refrigerators for the kitchen and, you know, washer and dryers for the gear and chairs and tables for the meeting rooms, any audio visual stuff for maybe remote learning and things like that. So, but they'll break them out as separate sections. So you can look at, these are the, like you say, the furnishing stuff versus this is what's required versus what we already have type stuff. So.
Thank you.
Jason.
Nothing at this time.
Kathy.
Questions?
I will say that I got 2 green sheets here from Bill Closter and Deb Rice registering in favor of developing and sending out this RFP. I do have a question. We talk about the fire facility and then the senior center, and then these, we don't have any obligation to the other tenants.
No, so I mean, essentially what we have right now, we have written agreements with all of those tenants that we are providing a space. So,
But that's space, and that's a yearly
that's-
space. So
right.
I would not necessarily want this RFP
Right.
to be designed with saying, and I don't even know how many or what the tenants are. I haven't looked at that. But I think that there's a difference between all the tenants and perhaps the senior center. So I would suggest that we, for lack of a better word, free ourselves from other tenants. If there's other space within the city, but I don't see us trying to design a fire facility on this piece of ground. I mean, our primary purpose here is to get a new fire facility.
Right.
And so even with the senior center, I would like to see that included as an alternate bid,
Mhm.
alternate as to attaching or alternate as to building separate. But I really, I mean, I'm glad we have these other tenants, but I think we ought to not bind ourselves to saying we're building space for this
Right.
tenant, that tenant, and the next tenant that happened to be in there. You know, I think we should confine our our RFP to our own obligation and not expand it. So that would be my suggestion as I look at this.
Sure.
To kind of tighten that up.
Mhm.
So, and you'll have another 2 weeks, folks, to take a read through it, and don't be shy about letting Adam know of other things that you see
Right.
that might need to be expanded or tightened.
Mhm.
But this is good. This is good. We need to move on this, especially with the hope that we're going to get some money.
Right.
Okay, let's move on to the Community Development Board proposal.
Yes, so this is something where our new city manager intern, this was one of the first projects he was tasked with, so that is Carol Swain. He has been working with us now. He is here every Tuesday from about 12:30 to about 4:30. He's working on some projects for myself and obviously some of the staff. So one of the first things we asked Carol to kind of look at and report to myself and Joe was the idea of the Community Development Board. So recently, city staff has been asked by council leadership to conduct a comprehensive review of the Community Development Board. The Community Development Board was established by council ordinance to meet federal requirements of citizen participation in the operation of the Community Development Block Grant Program for the city of Platteville. The board administers community development revolving loan funds consistent with the philosophy, policies, and procedures set out in the City of Platteville's Community Development Policy and Procedure Manual to attain rehabilitation of housing for eligible city residents. The City of Platteville currently holds a community planning and development department that is responsible for guiding, promoting, and regulating the enrichment of the built environment for the City of Platteville. Joe, wave, that's you. So through cooperation with the township, the department works in regulating activities, both long-term and short-term, with the surrounding extraterritorial zoning and planning area, implementing plans, redevelopment projects, historic preservation, zoning, housing programs, and building inspection. Municipalities similar in size to Platteville follow a community development board makeup that includes typically 7 members, as seen in Baraboo, Portage, Whitewater, Burlington, Richfield, Waupun, Cedarburg, and Port Washington. Alternatives discovered, such as Richland Center, encompass a director of community development who works with the city clerk and zoning administrator to plan projects. Other alternatives include Fort Atkinson, which intends on using a steering committee that includes up to 15 members made up of individuals from city departments, businesses, business professionals, educators, and other groups in their community. So the Community Development Board's last meeting was held in June of 2019. Its last action being the single family rehab project in works with Southwest Wisconsin Community Action Program, a project that focused on offering to Platteville residents who met requirements the ability to receive no interest loans. After reviewing municipalities like Platteville and the function of their Community Development Board, it was proven that other boards rarely held meetings. Some met around 3 times a year or showed a long list of canceled meetings. While the most active board being in the city of Baraboo, that the only function their board held was to approve any vouchers brought to the board, as well as discussions on topics that for the city of Platteville, the Common Council would already cover in their meetings. So budget and fiscal impact, there really is not a budget or fiscal impact anticipated at this time. So the recommendation coming from city staff has been tasked with the question as to whether the Community Development Board should continue to function in its current format, or with the board not meeting over such a great length of time, does it make sense to dismiss the board and best divide its duties among the council and existing committees? Consideration also needs to be made due to changes by the Wisconsin Department of Administration, minimizing the duties of the board, which has decreased the need for the board to meet. After reviewing the information, city staff is recommending it is best to dismiss the board and give any responsibility previously held to be put in the hands of the Common Council instead. So essentially what we would be looking for at the next meeting is a motion to eliminate the Community Development Board and shift all the duties and responsibilities previously held to be brought forward to the Common Council for future consideration, as that's pretty much what's been happening anyway. So.
And I will tell you that there are no people currently serving on the Community Development Board, because the people who just left the Community Development Board served for 3 years and never met. So it's really kind of useless to appoint people to committees that never meet. The basic goal of the Community Development Board is to make loans from funds?
Yeah, so that program provides assistance to homeowners that meet the income requirements or landlords that agree to rent to people that meet income requirements to do rehab work on the properties. Generally, most of the time, it's to the property owner to do the rehab work, and then the loan does not get paid back until that property is no longer their residence, essentially. And then when they sell it, then that money comes back, and it's a revolving loan fund.
And the original money, do you know where the original money, was it a?
The original money was it was all here before I got here. But there were several grant submissions over the years that accumulated to get to the point where I have it now. But it was primarily community development block grant funds. There were at least one other source of funds, and I'm drawing a blank on the name of that one, but the restrictions were very similar, or the use of the funds were very similar. So basically, the main thing that happened is the state, we operated under the state guidelines as far as how we have to review all those projects. They have gone through a whole string of changes as far as rehab funds throughout the whole state. And the main thing they did is they said, as long as you're following the manual that everybody has to follow, you don't have to take all those projects to the board, which we had to do previously. So it's a staff review following all the guidelines that have to be followed. And there's so many guidelines that it's kind of ridiculous that there really wasn't anything for the board to do but rubber stamp it anyway. So they basically got rid of that requirement. The other thing that the state has done is they're shifting a lot of that emphasis to regional revolving loan funds. And they've actually gone to a lot of communities that are not utilizing their funds, and they're pulling that money back and
Are we utilizing our funds?
well, we don't have a whole lot of funds to utilize, so that's part of the issue is we've loaned out, and until we get money back.
Until somebody sells a property and we get money
Right,
back.
Right.
Okay.
But our residents are still able to apply for the regional funds. It's just, it happens that our funds are administered by Southwest Cap, and Southwest Cap is also administering the regional funds. So if somebody from Platteville comes in, they'll direct them to our funds. But if they're not available, they'll go to the regional fund. So anyway, it's like you said, it's really, this board really doesn't have a need to meet for that reason, so.
Okay, so that'll be moved to action for the next time. If you have questions about that, contact Joe or Adam. Eileen?
Question, Joe, when the money is returned, so it was loaned out and it's returned, does that money have to be used for the same purpose again?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. All right, well, that concludes our information and discussion items. We only have one item left on our agenda. Motion by Eileen and a second by Lynn to adjourn. We'll vote.
Arts,
Yes.
Parrot,
Yes.
Shanley,
Yes.
Doss,
Yes,
Killian,
Yes.
Nichols, Cobb. Motion carries.
and thanks to everyone.